out of your day to join this webinar on making the business case for environmental action. I'm thrilled you're aboard. I'm Jonathan Shopley, Managing Director at the CarbonNeutral company here in London. For over 15 years, we've provided climate solutions to large corporates including Avis, BSkyB, Coca-Cola, Marks & Spencer's, Microsoft, and to many smaller companies such as Commercial, Pureprint, and Radio Taxis. They use us to design and deliver competitive greenhouse gas reduction strategies built on internal reductions, renewable energy, and carbon offsetting. I'm going to present for about 20 minutes and then take your questions, which you can ask at any time via the question tab on the control panel on your screen. Just type it in and don't forget to press send. So, why this webinar now? About a month ago, I was on these webinar waves to provide an update on the fifth assessment report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The first of three sub-reports laid out the strengthening case for climate disruption from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. It pressed governments to take early and urgent action. I made the point then that while business is already responding, continued policy uncertainty is clearly a challenge. And that's the backdrop to this webinar. Today I'm going to make the case that for business to take action on any environmental or sustainability issue, it must realize short-term value. Using climate as a current and very relevant example, I'll show how value can be delivered when the issue is deconstructed into components that are managed at the heart of a business. And when thoughtfully recombined into a coherent plan, then deliver short-term gains that are the foundation of a longer-term strategic response to climate reduction, climate disruption. So just one moment while I get this to move on. There we go. Right, so let's get cracking. Accenture's recent poll of 1,000 CEOs from 27 industries across 103 countries for the UN Global Compact found that 68% of those CEOs felt that the global economy is on the wrong track, not making sound progress on sustainability. They definitely get the imperative, though, to operate within the bounds of our natural capital, but they really struggle to quantify and capture the business value of sustainability and to make the business case for action. So here's another way to look at it. The vertical axis on this graph calibrates the strategic value of climate change. As we know, uncertainty and risk are the hunting grounds for strategic value because smart judgments about risk are what deliver competitive advantage. The strategic value of climate change is set to rise through the next 20 to 30 years. The Kyoto Protocol won't be replaced before 2020, and it'll take a good 20 years for its provisions to bite. After about 2050, the strategic value of climate change will begin to drop off as a decarbonized economy becomes the new business as usual. Fossil fuels will be replaced by renewables and nuclear, and we may even have technologies that suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. But let's face it, businesses struggle to set course beyond a 3 to 5 year planning horizons. So do most politicians, but that's not the subject of this discussion. So if we can't find value in that window, we'll naturally struggle to make headway. So, to be clear, business value from sustainability cannot always be measured directly in dollars and cents. But we can deconstruct the long-term objectives of climate into conventional business perspectives of value. I owe the ideas that I'm just about to present here to an article by Sally Uren for the Future in a recent edition of their house journal, Green Futures. And I'm going to illustrate it with a couple of mini case studies from our clients. So, let's start with a show me the money on the top line. For over a decade, Avis EMEA has used its carbon neutral company certification to build preference amongst those of its customers, all else being equal, ready to choose a car rental company with clear and understandable environmental benefits. Now, show me the money on the bottom line is delivered when a business prices carbon so that energy efficiency gets more attention and savings enhance the bottom line. Commercial and SME providing IT services and suppliers in the UK saved more than £100,000 from its bottom line once it became carbon neutral, and used that to focus efforts on reducing their carbon footprint through internal reductions, reductions in business travel, and reducing waste sent to landfill. Then, moving on to operations and the show me the strategic fit. When US carpet and office furniture manufacturer Interface's CEO, Ray Anderson, used his zero-waste sustainability vision to inspire lean and resource-efficient manufacturing, he was rewarded because he found a compelling strategic fit between Interface's operations and its environmental objectives. Interface put in a system to price all forms of waste in its value chain, not just carbon, by the way, and systematically challenges and rewards its employees for achieving annual reductions through its Mission Zero program. Now, show me the soft power. Consumer brands understand the soft power of their brands when they evoke trust and respect around social and environmental issues. Marks & Spencer's distilled 180 commitments in its sustainability strategy, including a commitment to carbon neutrality, into its Plan A brand extension, and calculated that Plan A's value was $185 million in net revenue to the business over its first 5 years in operation. So now, show me the edge, or the competitive edge. UPS, the courier company, has worked to understand the way in which future climate policy and regulations may affect its operations, and has implemented a range of internal efficiencies and carbon optimization programs, including carbon neutral shipping, to decarbonize its logistics services in ways designed to future-proof its competitive fitness. UPS is a substantial Scope 3 emissions source for many of its customers and has integrated carbon calculation deep into its systems and has created a competitive differentiation through provision of detailed emissions reporting to its customers. It's able to provide proof to its customers that UPS services are the lowest carbon way to move a package from point A to point B. Now, what about society? Show me the legacy. Give me relevance and a license to operate and grow. Well, B-Sky-B, the British satellite broadcaster, has placed sustainability objectives at the heart of its business and brand, within its supply chain, its broadcast content, and its customer services. Its renewable energy and carbon offset programs are a small but crucial component. Alignment with sustainability is at the heart of its transformation from least loved, most watched boys sports broadcaster to a media provider that gets and delivers the bigger picture. It has built a loyal customer base of 10 million subscribers and secured a license to operate and grow. And then finally, what about environment? Our access to biodiversity and natural resources. TUI, travel company, sees a direct connection between the sustained profitability of its travel business and conservation of the natural environments that their customers travel to see. There is a direct link between its services and their aim to inspire their customers to make sustainable travel choices through their Holidays Forever campaign. In 2011, it made 20 commitments around reducing their environmental impact, which they plan to achieve by 2014. And as part of this, they have pledged to save 1 million tons of CO2 emissions by investing in forestry, clean energy, and energy efficiency projects around the world. Their World Care Fund enables customers to make a £1 donation to these projects when making a booking, and they're on track to meet their goal. So now that we've explored some of the specific drivers of business value from sustainability, let's take a look at how to realize that value. Now, this painting, Picasso's cubist rendition of his lover and muse, Dora Maar, may be something of a surprise at this point of our exploration of value and sustainability. But let me explain. Picasso's relationship with Dora Maar was renowned for its depth of passion across artistic, intellectual, political, and sexual dimensions. He chose to portray that complexity through cubism, where the subject is deconstructed and then reassembled so that the overall impact exceeds that which a conventional portrait could never deliver. Take a look at Picasso's Guernica, a portrayal of the bombing of a Basque country village during the Spanish Civil War. It's arguably the most recognized and referenced depiction of the tragedies of war. The point I'm making here is that it's often the complexity and the intractable nature of environmental issues like climate change that confound our attempts to design and deliver a compelling solution. Can we draw inspiration from cubism? Let's give it a go. See if we can deconstruct carbon management to find the untapped sources of value. Here is the classic approach to conventional carbon management. Try it and test it. Plan, measure, set targets, reduce, declare victory, and start again. To start, let's look at the measuring or carbon footprinting. You'll see that this graph has 3 return on investment curves. The excitement curve shows that for some activities, the return far outweighs the effort or resources deployed. For the performance curve, the more you put in, the more you get out. And finally, for the threshold curve, there are diminishing returns as it gets harder and harder to extract value. For many progressive companies, their reporting starts on the excitement curve, especially if they were pioneer reporters. They got recognition in the form of awards or top positions in sustainability rankings. However, over time, they find that their rewards for reporting decay as others follow in their footsteps and raise the bar. Generally, their reporting becomes world-class, but their performance on emission reductions doesn't. There are 2 indicators to watch. When an organization spends more time collecting data than analyzing it, it gets stuck on the threshold curve. If the data is groomed for external audiences rather than picked over by management for least cost opportunities to make reductions at the heart of its operations, then it's likely to be dragged even further down the threshold curve. Microsoft is an example of a company that is riding the excitement curve. Daryl Smith, Director of Facilities and Energy at Microsoft, has applied an Internet of Things meets big data approach to slash the cost of operating the campus's 125 buildings in Seattle. The software, which is saving Microsoft millions of dollars and has helped leverage this internal learning to launch a global initiative called CityNext, which utilizes technology to help 21st century communities through transformation of operations and infrastructure. Moving on then to the next step, setting targets. On this chart, the vertical axis, exposure to the price of carbon, calibrates the extent to which a business is exposed to the price of carbon, and the horizontal axis segments those companies which generally seek bottom-line value from efficiencies from those that seek top-line benefits from customer preference. So, going around these 4 segments, starting bottom left, a heavy user of energy derived from fossil fuels will protect its competitive position if it sets an intensity target aiming to reduce emissions on a per output basis. For example, international cement manufacturer Holcim is consistently reduced its emissions per ton of product by displacing fossil fuels in its clinkering process with energy derived from waste. Beer company Saab Miller has done so by driving process improvements which has reduced both energy and water use. Now, top left, we'll find companies that have a low exposure to the price of carbon, say an international consultancy or company or bank going straight for absolute reductions as it seeks to engage its staff in the environmental initiatives that drive operational efficiencies and align the organization directly with the IPCC's guidance to reduce emissions in absolute terms by around 80% by mid-century. Insurance company Kaplan has done a lot of work to promote energy efficiency in buildings. waste management and recycling, and it's also included a review of staff travel and investments in video conferencing. Carbon offsetting of the remaining travel-related emissions ensures Kaplan meets its reduction goals. Moving across to the top right, companies with a low exposure to the carbon price have the option to build preference using the simplicity of a carbon neutral certification. Rapidly growing internet retailer ASOS has used CN certification for its deliveries in order to support its other sustainability activities with a clear, credible statement of action. Some services companies use their carbon neutral certification to attract, engage, and retain the best talent. Top-tier management consulting firm Bain & Company is regularly engaged in the war for talent, working to attract the best and brightest, and have found their climate program to be an important part of the value proposition during recruiting. And then to the final segment. Only a very portion of companies can afford to take on carbon neutrality without losing competitiveness. So we find the majority of our clients using offset inclusive carbon management approaches to ensure that they take a glide path of reductions through a combination of internal reductions, renewable energy purchasing, and offsetting. In addition to some of the larger companies that use this approach that I've mentioned already, I'd also call out the publisher Macmillan, which utilizes offset inclusive strategies as a lever to reach its goal of a 65% reduction in its carbon footprint by 2020. This has catalyzed an employee-led task force that has delivered emissions reductions internally and in their supply chain. And the UK headquartered law firm Pinsent Masons, which purchases renewable energy where possible and offsets their travel emissions. Now, let's take a look at what offset inclusive carbon management looks like in practice when we move on from setting competitively framed targets to delivering those reductions. Here's an emission profile of a typical growth business. Under business as usual, emissions are set to almost double in the next 3 years. This hypothetical company selects a stage reduction path, shooting for zero emissions at the end of year 3. For the vast majority of companies, reducing emissions to zero is either impossible or prohibitively expensive. So reductions are delivered through a combination of internal reductions with external reductions, those sourced through markets for renewable energy and carbon offsets. How can companies decide then where to draw the line between internal and external reductions? A classic make or buy decision. Let's deconstruct each of these options a bit further. Internal reductions generally fall into 4 categories, and in increasing levels of investment they are. First, to change staff and management behavior by, for example, promoting energy conservation. Switching stuff off when not in use is the traditional low-hanging fruit. Second, is to change processes, and another increasingly deployed example is displacing business travel with video conferencing in service companies, and supply chain optimization for manufacturing companies. Third, switching away from fossil-fueled energy by installing captive renewable energy supplies such as solar, biomass, or wind. And fourth, changing the capital assets from high carbon to low carbon, for example, moving power-hungry data centers to capture sources of renewable energy such as nuclear, hydro, geothermal, to selecting or building low-carbon facilities. Now, there are also 4 broad buy options which involve the purchase of instruments to secure low-carbon power from energy markets: renewable tariffs, renewable energy certificates, renewable energy guarantees of origin, and carbon credits from carbon markets for offsetting. Deciding where to draw the line is a straightforward financial decision. When the cost of carbon abatement for the next cheapest option to reduce emissions internally exceeds the cost of a qualified and quality instrument, then the buy option is the way to go. Microsoft has chosen a hybrid approach. It has set an internal carbon fee and applies that to emissions from all its operations. Revenues raised from the application of the carbon fee are held in a central fund, and that is used to invest in internal reductions, to purchase renewable energy, and to purchase and retire a portfolio of carbon credits to offset the unavoidable emissions and ensure it maintains its carbon neutral status. So, carbon offsets can offer the most cost-effective way for a business to achieve its carbon reduction goals, and in a way provide something of a third dimension. Once that decision is made, there are options for the type of project a company may want to source, depending on the other objectives of the business. On the one end, there's charismatic carbon, so-called because of the extended story the project offers, not just about emission reductions, also about working with communities on the ground, providing health benefits, education, providing additional income streams, and building supply chain resilience and protecting biodiversity. These are the projects that offer businesses a range of compelling engagement opportunities for their stakeholders. They are like 3D adverts to their proactive investment in emissions reductions. TUI Travel visited a project in Kenya and one of their projects in Kenya and leveraged the impact their carbon finance is having on the ground through their internal and external communications in blogs, videos, posters, and educational materials. Efficient carbon, on the other hand, does what it says on the tin. Delivers emission reductions highly effectively, but doesn't have much of a tale to tell. The value is in delivering quality emission reductions from, say, renewable energy, where it's hard to compete against cheaper fossil fuels. So again, companies have the option of building a competitively framed portfolio of offsets, part of which tell a story and engage key audiences, the other part which may deliver very cost-effective reductions. Now, it's time to put all these optimized components or cubes back together. And here we find that companies may tend or can tend to sort of tell the story a little bit as they've done it, but we also find here that when companies take a cubist approach, they are more successful in delivering value. In this early Picasso cubist painting, Factory, Horta de Ebo, he reassembled the different dimensions of his subject to show, from my perspective, a factory as an integrated and harmonized aspect within its natural environment. Pretty much what we're seeking for our businesses as we take on the sustainability challenge. Coming back to M&S, it built a truly holistic sustainability strategy that covers climate change, waste, natural resources, how they work with suppliers, and the health and well-being of customers. And they put that complex set of actions together in their Plan A. But their painting isn't done. Successful consumer engagement on their plan isn't complete, and that's a dimension that they're working to add to the picture. Or if you take an SME like Commercial, which recognized the opportunity to piece its various actions together in a coherent program that engages both internal and external audiences. While they're changing systems, processes, and behavior internally, they also take that message out, that journey out to customers to educate, inform, engage, and build preference. So, in summary, I appreciate that this has been a rather brisk canter through a lot of material. However, I hope that I've made a convincing case that when it comes to taking action on environmental sustainability, short-term value is really critical. That the component parts of a strategy hold the key, and how you put it all together is critically important. And that does work for other components of sustainability. So, that ends my piece, and I see that there are one or two questions that have come in, and so if you give me a moment, I will read that out and attempt to answer. Is there a general trend in the mix of carbon offset portfolios between cost-efficient and charismatic carbon? Their general trend. So I would say that the general trend of how companies are putting portfolios together really does reflect the economic climate that most of those companies are working in. And many who set out in the early days with highly charismatic projects have used cost-efficient carbon credits to reduce the average price of their offset portfolios as they've charted themselves through more difficult economic times. I do think that there are a couple of companies that really get certain offset technologies, some that are really keen on protecting deforestation, for example, and have stayed true to that and invest a large part of their portfolios in those kind of projects. But in my view, right now, the carbon market is working well to provide a range of solutions to clients using offset inclusive carbon management and ways in which they can combine charismatic with cost efficient. Any other questions? No. Okay. So that then just about takes me up to my the half-an-hour mark, and I would really like to thank you for your attention, and to say that I very much welcome your feedback, and we'd be happy to answer any further questions. We will be sharing the slides from today's presentations, and we'd certainly be happy to provide information about our services as well. Contact information for us is on this final slide. And we're closing the webinar now. And again, I'd like to thank you so very much for attending. Thank you.